We're interrupting this programme to bring you some breaking news. The American heavyweight boxing legend Muhammad Ali has died at the age of 74 at a hospital in Phoenix in Arizona. An iconic figure, Ali was known globally not only for his ring career, but also for his civil rights activism. He'd suffered from Parkinson's for 3 decades and had been hospitalised multiple times in recent years. Well, our correspondent James Cook is in Phoenix, Arizona, and we join him now. James, just tell us, Muhammad Ali was considered to be the 20th century's greatest fighter. Just tell us more about his life and why he meant so much.
Yes, that's right. Muhammad Ali confirmed to be dead at the age of 74, according to his spokesman, Bob Gunnell, family spokesperson Bob Gunnell, saying he had passed away after a 32-year battle with Parkinson's disease. We are told that his funeral will take place in his hometown of Louisville in Kentucky. And in a further statement, the Ali family say they would like to thank everyone for their thoughts, prayers and support, and the family of Muhammad Ali would like to ask for privacy at this time. We're told that details about funeral plans will come later at a later stage. But he was, of course, a legend, not just for his exploits in the boxing ring, but as a man as well. Controversial in his time, refusing the draft for the Vietnam War, joining the Nation of Islam, converting, of course, to Islam, and renouncing his birth name Cassius Clay, as he put it, a slave name. He was unpopular for a period in the late 1960s here in the United States for his positions, particularly for his rejection and refusal to serve in the war in Vietnam. Called 3 times to step forward. He refused to step forward, was told that he was committing a felony, was tried, was sentenced, and eventually in 1971 that sentence was overturned on appeal. And then as the years rolled on, history began to judge Muhammad Ali really in a different way as America changed, as the war in Vietnam became more unpopular, and as people considered the struggles against racism which he had experienced and which he talked about in such detail, people began to view him in a different light, until now, at his death, he dies a legend, not just in terms of boxing, but as a great American and a great sports person on the world stage. So Muhammad Ali, just to confirm, dead at the age of 74, according to his spokesman. And he had been ill for quite some time, hadn't he? Yes, he'd first been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease a long time ago, back in 1984. It had been a long and difficult battle for Muhammad Ali. He had been seen to be struggling with the disease, most notably perhaps when lighting the Olympic flame in Atlanta in 1996, when he was trembling. It clearly required perhaps as much courage to continue and to stand in the public eye in that manner as it did for him to face down his famous opponents in the ring. And what a career he had as a boxer as well, of course. Quite remarkable. Many famous fights. The Rumble in the Jungle with George Foreman comes to mind, of course. His 3 battles with Joe Frazier, his great rival, of which he won 2, and many more beside. But of course he will be remembered for his character as much as anything, Muhammad Ali, and the way he went out about his business, not only as a boxer in the ring, where he, as he said himself, most famously would float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, but also in his approach to how he spoke about his opponents, how he taunted his opponents before and after his fights, and the colourful language he used, which cemented his place in the history of the United States. OK, James, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, James Cook. Well, Joe Wilson now takes a look back at his life and his career.
I'll whoop any man in the world, and I want everybody out there on TV to know it. I am the greatest.
Muhammad Ali simply voiced his own punchlines. He could tell you he'd float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, and then he'd do it.
He's got him. 4th time.
Born Cassius Clay in Louisville, Kentucky in 1942, he first achieved fame when he won gold at the Rome Olympics in 1960. 3 years later, he was famously floored by a left hook from Sir Henry Cooper. Cooper stole the moment, lost the fight. And Clay was left with a shot at the world title held by Sonny Liston, a fearsome fighter considered unbeatable. Ali called him the Bear, mocked him before, during and after their fight.
The bear couldn't even get a good lick, I'm so pretty. Put him in the hospital. He's never been stopped. He's never been won. Oh, I'm so great.
The next day he announced his conversion to Islam, swearing allegiance to Elijah Muhammad.
Why do you insist on being called Muhammad Ali now?
That's the name given to me by my leading teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's my original name. That's a black man name. Cassius Clay was my slave name. I'm no longer a slave.
On religious grounds, Ali refused to obey his call-up to the war in Vietnam. The territory he now occupied was way beyond boxing.
A man who can pay in 2 fights for 3 bomber planes, why would you take and seek out and be anxious to call me out of 30 men who you could have called?
Mr. Clay, Muhammad Ali, Mr.
He was stripped of his title and sentenced to 5 years in jail. This was quashed on appeal, but Ali was refused a license to box. He spent over 3 years out of the ring. But his career had one remarkable twist of bravery and achievement to come. In Zaire, in 1974, against the mountainous George Foreman, the rumble in the jungle.
If you think I whoop Sonny Liston, you wait till I get George Foreman. He talks too much, he's ugly, he's pretending I'm the true champion, and they make me the underdog. I'm gonna show them all they're wrong, because I'm the champion. I'm the real champion. There'll never be one like me. And all of you people in Britain who rank me as the greatest, I'm gonna prove I'm the greatest. I'm gonna prove to you I'm the greatest. We're gonna prove to the world I'm the greatest. This is my last fight. I don't want none of you to miss it. So please come to the theaters. I'm going to eat some raw meat, and I'm going to train. I'm going to get ready and chop some more trees.
Well, Ali won after deliberately absorbing punches and exhausting his opponent. They called it rope-a-dope.
Oh my God, he's won the title back at 32.
He just beat himself out. He was so tired, he was swaying and just fall on the ropes. I said, man, this is the wrong place to get tired.
Ali predicted Zaire would be his last fight. It wasn't. He fought on for 7 more years. The onset of Parkinson's syndrome was only too obvious when, with great dignity and bravery, he lit the Olympic flame in 1996. When it came to a vote for Sports Personality of the Century, there was no contest. Ali polled more than the rest of the contenders put together. And even while his body was failing him, the famous wit still sparkled.
I had a good time boxing. I enjoyed it, and I may come back.
Go to any country, any city, any village in the world. People know about Muhammad Ali. To put it simply, to use his words, he was the greatest.
I am the king of the world. Hold it. I'm pretty.
Hold it, you're not that pretty.
I'm a bad man. Wait. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
Well, joining us on the phone from New York now is Muhammad Ali's biographer, Tom Hauser. And you were also a personal friend of his, weren't you? I'm terribly sorry for your loss. First of all, how will you remember Muhammad Ali?
Well, this isn't just a loss for Ali's friends. It's a loss for the whole world. And it's a sad time, but it's not a tragic one. The tragedy is what happened to Ali in recent years. There are a lot of ways to remember Ali. He was arguably the greatest fighter of all time. He was a beacon of hope for oppressed people all over the world when he refused induction into the United States Army during the height of the war in Vietnam. He stood up for the proposition that unless you have a very good reason for killing people, war is wrong. But in the end, I think the way I will remember Ali and the way he might be remembered in history is that he was the embodiment of goodwill and love. There was a spirit about him that people responded to all over the world for decades. We saw that when he lit the Olympic flame at the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. We saw it again when he was in London for the 2012 Olympics. He really taught a lot of people how to love.
He really did have an incredibly wide appeal. I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier, somebody saying to me that he is still not only the greatest fighter, but one of the greatest sports people of all time. And people even now know who he is and know him for his both his civil rights work and for his sportsmanship. Why do you think he did manage to have this impact? You said he was a very loving person, but what was it about his personality?
He had an incredibly charismatic persona. He was possibly the best-looking man in the world. He was telegenic. He was athletically gifted. Dick Gregory said a long time ago that if aliens came from out of space and you wanted to show them one person who personified what was best about the human species, he would show them Ali. He had an aura of pure goodwill and love. He was exciting. He was dynamic. You know, most sports figures tend to blur together over time. Michael Jordan made a great impact in basketball, but 100 years from now, Michael Jordan and LeBron James and Stephen Curry will sort of blur with Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, and that's true of most athletes in most sports. But Ali will stand alone forever.
It wasn't always an easy journey for him, was it? But he made it seem easy. There was his refusal to fight in the Vietnam War, and yet he was still able to come out as a leader for people, wasn't he?
Well, it was a very hard journey for him. Look, life is hard. Nobody said life was easy. And Ali made a sacrifice when he refused induction into the United States Army. He gave up his world championship and risked going to jail for 5 years. But what he said at the time and afterward was there were people who believed in the war and went into the armed forces and were killed in that war, and they made a much bigger sacrifice than he did.
And that actually, for many people, for many black Americans, African Americans, it was a different way of tackling the civil rights movement, wasn't it?
Well, what Ali did, and obviously he joined the Nation of Islam in the early 1960s, which is very different from Orthodox Islam, which he converted to later in his life. The Nation of Islam was described by Arthur Ashe as a radical separatist group that believed in a sort of American apartheid. And so it was a long journey for him to really sharing mainstream Islamic and then mainstream American values, but America moved too. It was a remarkable journey, and I have to think that one of the things that allowed America to elect Barack Obama, an African American with a strange sounding name, in 2008 was that this country had learned to embrace a man named Muhammad Ali.
How do you think he will be remembered by people around the world and also people at home in America?
That's hard to say because right now people understand that Muhammad Ali sacrificed for his principles, but they don't really understand what those principles were. They have sort of only a vague idea of the journey he traveled, his own personal evolution. And in this world of 140-character tweets and 20-second sound bites, it's hard to get people to really focus on the scope of his life. But I hope that he's remembered as a good, loving man who believed in equality for all people, who, as I said earlier, stood up for the proposition that unless you have a very good reason for killing people, war is wrong. We still don't seem to have learned that lesson, and by we, I mean the whole world population. He taught us how to love. He taught a lot of people how to love who didn't know how. He also changed the way people of color thought about themselves, and he changed the way white people thought about people of color. He was a very special man.
Tell me a bit more about that he changed the way people of color thought about themselves and also the way white people thought of people of color.
Every time Ali looked in the mirror and said, "I'm so pretty," what he was really saying before it became fashionable was black is beautiful. And look, when Ali came on the scene in the early 1960s, America was a very different country from what it is now. And not just America. I think the world has come a long ways. If you were to look at the makeup of England today and compare it with what it was in 1960, you'd see big changes too. I'm not sure anybody thought that a Muslim would be elected mayor of London in 1960. So the whole world is changing. But a lot of people of color, a lot of black people in the United States in the early 1960s thought it was better to be white. Just seemed like an easier road. And Ali made those people just as proud of being black as somebody else might be of being white. That's extraordinary to be that sort of vehicle for an entire people.
And tell me, we've spoken quite a lot about how other people might remember him, but how do you think Muhammad Ali would want to be remembered himself?
Ali had an ego, so I think he'd like to be remembered as the greatest fighter of all time, but he'd also like to be remembered as a good, loving man, a deeply religious man, and somebody who cared about people, all people.
Okay, Thomas C. Hauser, award-winning biographer of Muhammad Ali and also a personal friend. Once again, I'm terribly sorry for your loss, but thank you for joining us.
Okay, and we shouldn't cry because he's gone. We should smile because we had him.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, with me now is the BBC's Tom Donkin, who's been following events closely. Tom, firstly, what kind of reaction have we been having from people around the world on this?
Well, of course, a lot of people were expecting this. He's been ill for some years, and in the last few hours we were expecting an announcement like this. His family, he's got 7 daughters and 2 sons, came to be by his side and really to say goodbye to their father, who, you know, is a larger-than-life figure. He's not just a dad to them, but an inspiration to many people around the world. I've just been watching some old footage, some interviews. You know, he was interviewed by some of the greats, David Frost and Parkinson here in the UK, and you just were reminded on his wit and sort of the fire in his belly and the light behind his eyes. He was sort of a character who, without any match, the charisma that he sort of exuded was incredible. And you just have to see where that came from, that fire in the belly. He grew up in Kentucky in a time when segregation was still rife, and his family came from humble beginnings and worked for wealthier families. And there was a story of how he first got into boxing when his parents gave him a bicycle at the age of 12. That bicycle was then stolen. He went to see a police officer to ask where he could learn how to box, because he wanted to find the person who stole it, to beat them up. And the police officer obviously saw something back then and took him in and taught him how to box. So he's definitely been a renegade and defied the odds and just wanted to speak out for many causes which he's adopted over the years. But I think Muhammad Ali will be remembered, and he has been on Twitter in the last few minutes as, you know, just the biggest inspiration to many people, not just for African Americans, but, you know, people all around the world who are challenged by adversity, because he's someone who certainly overcame a lot of obstacles in his life. And just tell us a little bit more about the illness that he was suffering from, and he'd been in and out of hospital over the last few years. Yeah, I mean, last time he went into hospital was last year in 2015. This latest bout, or this sort of health problem, was a respiratory problem with himself. It was just a routine visit to hospital. Many people thought he'd be out in just a couple of days. Obviously, his health deteriorated quite rapidly, but all around the world, people will be remembering for those amazing boxing scenes. You know, the iconic picture of him standing over Sonny Liston when he took the world title. 3 times he won the World Heavyweight Championship of the world. He had some of the biggest fans in the universe. I mean, Nelson Mandela, Elvis Presley was one of his biggest fans. He was personal friends with Malcolm X. You know, he really... Martin Luther King as well. Indeed, yes. You know, a lot of people remember him for his boxing, but he really, you know, pushed ahead the civil rights movement in the United States, and many people will remember him for that, certainly. Okay, Tom, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you. Well, we're going to go now to the former professional boxer George Foreman, who you'll remember Ali fought in the famous Rumble in the Jungle in what was formerly Zaire. He joins me on the line now from Huffman in Texas. Firstly, I just want to say that I'm terribly sorry for your loss. I mean, the Rumble in the Jungle was one of your biggest fights. What will be your enduring memory of Muhammad Ali?
Boy, I tell you, Muhammad Ali was the toast of publicity. He brought so much to boxing, the big purses, the big celebrity status. I fought him and lost, but it's been a great part of my life because it offered me fame beyond compare. So I'll miss him. It's like we were one guy. The part of me is gone.
A part of you is gone. When was the last time you were with him, and what was your memory of him?
I see a lot of him. We visited last. I was in Louisville, Kentucky. Sports Illustrated brought him on and named their prize, the Muhammad Ali Sportsman Award. So I was there to present it last year. And I sat with him, and all you can do is really enjoy his presence. And one thing I can often say that we're talking from Europe, and especially London, he loved London. If he had been born and raised in London, he never would have changed his name. He's got a taste of being a real man when he fought Cooper, though. Although he beat Cooper, he was booed, but he was also cheered and toasted there. He loved that country. He loved it. And
he certainly was loved here in London. I just want to take you back to that fight and what was then, Zahir. I think we are looking at pictures now of Muhammad Ali on our screen. The Rumble in the Jungle fight, which is, for many people, still one of the greatest fights of all time. Obviously, you were adversaries then. Tell us what your interaction with him was like then and how you became to be friends.
We were always friends. As a matter of fact, we together, the two of us, thought up the Rumble in the Jungle. We decided how much we were going to be paid. Don King wrote up a blank contract for me. We went to Africa. We never argued. We never had a fight. As a matter of fact, I only spoke with him and greeted him when we got into the ring. So there was no anger. I hated losing to him. Still don't like the idea that I lost to Muhammad Ali. But I tell you, the loss of his life has been greater to me than the loss of the fight title to him in Africa. I really miss him. I'm going to miss him a lot.
I mean, to this day, he is still known as the greatest of all time. His style of boxing was unusual, and yet still nobody has taken that sort of title, greatest of all time, from him. Why do you think that is?
Well, to really recognize him as a great boxer is an injustice. Muhammad Ali was probably one of the greatest human beings I've ever met. No doubt he was probably one of the best persons that lived in this day and age. To put him as a boxer is an insult. You would see him and become a better reporter. He was the greatest man to even do a movie or to even walk down the street to recite a poem. Boxing was too small for Muhammad Ali. Don't take him there.
Boxing was too small for him. We know that he was an incredible civil rights campaigner, humanitarian, and really worked for human rights around the world. What do you think his biggest contributions were?
Beauty. Muhammad Ali was beautiful. And that's what we'll always remember about him. He said it better than anyone. Look at me. I'm pretty. I once was dating a girl, and, well, I tried to date a girl, and she told me she had met Muhammad Ali on the street, and he said he was pretty. And she said, you know what? He was pretty. I hadn't met him at that point. Then I met him for the first time, and I saw the girl was not putting me down. He was beautiful. He will always be remembered as something beautiful on the earth.
He certainly was. We were just speaking to Thomas C. Hauser, his biographer, who said he was beautiful inside, beautiful outside as well. But that when he told about himself as pretty, he was also uplifting black people at the time. What do you think of that?
To go there with black and white is an injustice. Muhammad Ali was the greatest. He's a part of mankind. Forget about that junk, black and white. Don't go there with him.
So how will he be remembered in America as both as a humanitarian, as a personality, and as a boxer?
Well, wherever there'll be some injustice, and when people are afraid to speak up, they'll say, I'm going to do the Muhammad Ali. And that means bravery. He'll be remembered as truly an American because he typified bravery more than anyone that I've ever met. He was just brave, a brave American.
A brave American indeed, a brave person indeed. And
a brave man of the world because, as I said earlier, He loved England, especially London. Boy, they treated him like he wanted to be treated there way back when he fought Cooper.
He seemed to have an incredible ability to connect with people from all around the world, whether it was in America, whether it was, you know, a leader like Nelson Mandela. What do you think that was about him?
Because he was real. What you saw is what you get. There wasn't anything he was holding back. He gave you all of himself.
He gave you all of himself. When you say
all
he was real...
Himself. How many people will give you all of themselves? Not many. He was everything. He was a royal guy, but at the same time, he was your common, ordinary fellow that you meet on the street.
A royal jabber and an ordinary fella and a real guy, absolutely. Just take us back to that time again in Zaire when you were getting ready for
the... I've just about run out of time. Thank you so much for having me on. God bless you, and God bless Muhammad Ali's family.
Okay, George Foreman, we're incredibly grateful for taking the time to speak to us here on BBC World News. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, Tom, some really incredible memories there from George Foreman. Also talking about how he wants his friend to be remembered not just as a boxer, but a humanitarian and somebody that was too big for just boxing, wasn't he?
Absolutely, and it's incredible to hear from George. I mean, those two fighting Rumble in the Jungle, seen by many as the greatest sporting event ever of all time. So a couple of living legends, you know, discussing. They were friends, they became friends, but you have to look at that footage in Zaire before the match, and there was some absolute close talking between the two men there. So I think there was friendship might have been put out of the ring a little bit on that day. But of course, he did mention that Muhammad Ali was a brave man, and of course he was brave. The time when he was growing up and becoming a fighter, it wasn't spoken about civil rights, but he gave that a voice.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you. Just to remind you of our breaking news, the boxing legend Muhammad Ali has died at the age of 74. The three-time former world heavyweight champion was admitted to hospital on Thursday with a respiratory illness. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 1984, 4 years after he retired. Muhammad Ali was born Cassius Clay in the southern state of Kentucky, United States. He converted to the Nation of Islam after winning his first world title in 1964. You're watching BBC World News.